Did System of a Down steal one of their biggest chart-topping hits? Which bandmate did guitarist Daron Malakian yell at because he wanted him to practice more? What's the meaning behind the lyrics "nonstop-disco, betcha didn't know"? Stick around as we answer these questions and more on 10 Fun Facts About Hypnotize and Mesmerize by System of a Down. Number 1. Daron's singing voice. Most people are familiar with Serj Tankian as the lead singer of System of a Down. However, on Hypnotize and Mesmerize, the band wanted guitarist Daron Malakian's vocals to play a much larger role. Serj would also take a small step back, allowing Daron to contribute more of his lyrics to the writing process as well. As Daron explains, "Serj is an amazing vocalist, but we've always bounced vocal ideas off each other, and me singing is just another natural mutation on the sound. I also had more of a hand in the lyrics this time around. Before, I would leave a lot of space for Serj to write lyrics. But since I had my own personal situations that I was dealing with this time, I kind of said, these are the lyrics, and he respected that." Serj would include that he wants others to appreciate both songwriters beyond their traditional roles within the band. "It's important to me after 10 years for people to recognize our talents above and beyond what they imagined we did. They didn't know Daron as a singer. Daron's been my friend since before we formed System of a Down, and I want people to know that he's got an amazing voice, and that he also writes really potent, cutting lyrics. Just like it's important for me that people recognize that I do more than just sing, that I play piano and guitar, and that I write songs as well."
In the Nile, where the crew regulators smoking cigarros.
While fans of the band may have seen Daron's vocal contributions as an evolution of the band, Daron would see it as a return to form, noting that he had always been involved in the lyrical process and was actually a lead singer when the duo first started working together. "I've always written lyrics, like Prison Song and Deer Dance, to name a couple. I've written almost every System chorus, but I wrote more verses this time too. I've always considered myself a songwriter, but this time I really focused on being the best songwriter I can possibly be. Sometimes you do it by getting into a character, sometimes you just drive around town. Me, Serj, and Shavo were in the same elementary school together, so we all go pretty far back together. Serj is a little older than I am, so we never really hung out until we started playing music together. I was a lead singer for a band, and we shared a rehearsal studio with the band that Serj was the keyboard player for. We decided to form a new band and trade places. He became the lead singer. So this latest mutation, where I'm singing more on the new album, feels very natural for us. It wasn't like me and Serj got into fights because he wanted to sing it all." Number 2. Meaning of Hypnotize. "She's scared that I will take her away from there. Dreams that her country left with no one there. Mesmerize the simple-minded. Propaganda leaves us blinded." The early 2000s political climate was shaped largely by the United States war in Iraq. This topic would be a major source of lyrical content for System of a Down, who were caught in the middle as US citizens who also had family in Iraq. As guitarist Daron Malakian explains, "My grandmother lives there, and my aunts, uncles, and cousins. They're alive, they're not dead. They don't say we're great, because they're not, but at least they're not dead. It's funny, our family is in danger now, but nobody in my family is anti-American, so I don't understand Americans who are so against the other side. It's been a really strange couple of years for me. It's brought up a lot of emotions, a lot of songs. I've had moments of waking up in the middle of the night with crazy pictures in my head of really bad things happening to my family there. That's a big part of the stress on my family, but just looking at the way the world is now, that bums me out more than just my family being in Iraq. I mean, 200,000 people die in the tsunami, right? And people are still bombing each other. It's like, don't you see what's possible? We should be able to combine our strengths to try and find the one thing that can save us, and instead, we're throwing bombs on the earth, polluting it more. It doesn't make sense to me."
Nuke the whales? You don't really believe that, do you?
I don't know. Gotta nuke something.
Touché.
Malakian would explain that the lyrics to Hypnotize reflect the songwriter's frustration in regards to the political propaganda and those gullible enough to blindly repeat what the TV tells them. "It just feels like we're outnumbered by zombies, you know? I'm not just saying that it's that way in the United States, I'm talking about all over the world. So I sit in the middle. I'm not anti-American or anti-anything. I'm just anti-dumbass MFers. I see us as a socially conscious band, not just a political band. The guy sitting in his car waiting for his girl while there's a world going on around him, that's what System of a Down mean to me. Each person is a victim of the system, but is also a system themselves. Every person can be more aware, and with more people being aware, the culture will change. And when the culture changes, the politics will change, and the whole climate will change. Like John Lennon's song Imagine, the things he says in that song are so possible.
Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try.
It's not a song that pisses you off. It doesn't cater to the right wing or left wing. You just can't argue with it. And that's why the song carries so much weight. I can't say that's how we are. We piss a lot of people off. But if you're making a point that both sides agree with, I think you're more dangerous. It's the small things that really matter. The energy we put out can be positive or negative, and we make those decisions 100 times a day. Until we care about people other than ourselves, until we realize that we do have a connection with them because they're human beings, we have no real hope of understanding each other.
You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Daron would also relate the allure of popular rap music from the 2000s to the wartime recruiting tactics of the US military. A lot of MTV's programming is hip-hop based, and the messages are usually all about bling bling. A lot of hip-hop artists sing about stuff that's more important, but they seldom get heard. The ones who get heard are the ones saying, think about yourself, make your money, it's all you, everybody have a good time and party. 17, 18, and 19-year-old kids are getting prepared to go and fight in a war, and they don't even know why they're fighting. Army recruitment ads always say things like, start a career, make friends. They never tell you how you're going over there to kill people.
What's your sole purpose in this army?
To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant.
God damn it, Gump! You're a goddamn genius.
Number 3. Double album. System of a Down may have only released 5 full-length albums in their multi-decade history as a band, but those albums have not been short on music by any means. Can you imagine a world where System of a Down only released 3 albums? Steal This album was only released because the band had so much extra material left after completing somewhere around 44 songs for the Toxicity recording sessions. When the band returned to the studio to begin work on their 4th album, it quickly became clear that they would again have enough material to fill 2 albums worth of music. As drummer Dolmayan says, there was so much good material. We were all like, man, what are we gonna do with this? How can we take this body of work and just cut it? It's like cutting a quarter of your body off. Which quarter do you pick? Well, I think I have a good idea which quarter we would all not pick. Singer Serj Tankian would agree that the material would be best released in 2 parts, rather than bombarding the listener with an extensive track listing on one album. I remember one day sitting down and listening to 30 songs in a row in the studio with Rick, and I was done. I was exhausted. I couldn't listen to another song, and I kept on thinking, I can't imagine someone having to go through this. Our songs are pretty progressive and all over the place and high energy and all that, and with people's short attention spans, it's like you definitely have to focus on the songs. Enjoy them and get another one a bit later. Guitarist Daron Malakian would concur that people's attention spans are way too short these days, and that releasing too many songs at once would cause some of them to get lost in the shuffle. People's attention spans don't run too long these days. I want to release this in a way that will do each song justice. You put too many songs on your record and it ends up like a family with too many kids. Some of them get neglected.
Hey, kids, we're eating dinner tonight. Come on.
Sugar, spiders, aerials, war, temper, honey, question, hypnotize, soldier side, Revanga, Cigaro, peephole, soil, attack, dreaming, sweet pea, bounce, lonely day, X, forest, psycho, shimmy, deer dance, chop suey, Cubert, Ardo. If you learned something from this video or found it entertaining, show us some love or drop a super thanks down below in the comments. Your support will help me out and directly encourages the creation of new content. Thank you for watching. Now back to the video. Bonus fact: meat and potatoes. Meet John Dolmayan, drummer for System of a Down. Like a lot of drummers, John is not a flashy guy compared to his counterparts. John embraces the role as the unsung hero and foundation for a band filled with guys who look like this. It's almost as if they were cartoon characters who got a hold of some pixie dust and came to life. While John may look like an awesome rock music fan you might bump into on the street, among his bandmates he looks rather, well, normal. I'm not a songwriter and I'm not a soloist, but I'm the meat and potatoes of the band. I don't care about fame, I care about playing drums, and that's why System's a perfect fit for me. Drummer John Dolmayan and guitarist Daron Malakian don't always see eye to eye, and the two actually came to throwing blows at each other during the toxicity sessions. The incident was so bad that they both end up going to the hospital, but fortunately, they both had good friends who helped take them there, each other. John explains that despite their disagreements, their conflicts are a byproduct of two passionate individuals who only want the best for their band. Our personalities are so different, and we're not afraid to say anything. Me and Daron are probably a little more vocal about things than Serj or Shavo, but we're both cancers. We were both born like 3 days apart, and we're both volatile and emotional. It's all positive stuff in the end, even if we don't exactly put things in a diplomatic way sometimes. It's all about love, and it's all because we want to succeed. It's less about commercial success and more about artistic success. We want to change music. We don't want to just be a part of something. We want to be in the forefront.
Are you up? I'm an idiot. From now on, no matter what happens, if you want to punch me in the face or spit in my mouth while I'm asleep, it doesn't matter. I'm always going to be watching your back. I think that we both have a light in our stomachs. A special light, like E.T. And the team needs somebody to light the way.
Number 4. Shavo beats the blues. Meet Shavo Odadjian, guitarist, bassist for System of a Down. You can typically recognize him by his long braided beard. Although he doesn't sing, you can see him dancing around on stage with his bass. However, despite his happy-go-lucky exterior, Shavo admits that he has had his own struggles with depression. I'm finally just enjoying everything, instead of always being pissed off or sad or worried, you know? Don't make me look like that guy from The Cure, but I was always worried about everything. But these were deep things, man. No one could see it.
I am alone.
The most loneliest day of my life.
Like other musicians, Shavo learned to channel his depression through a renewed passion towards his own instrument, the bass guitar. Often criticized by his bandmates for treating the bass as a mere tool of the trade, Shavo eventually found a renewed sense of pride and passion towards the bass guitar, admitting that he often spent most of his spare time playing guitar. They were like, "Dude, you're a bass player who plays better guitar than bass. What the hell is wrong with you?" Daron would say to me, practice your bass every day." But I was looking at practice like work, like schoolwork. I would come home every day after practicing with the band and play guitar for hours. I was good enough on bass, so why should I have to practice it at home? But then I realized I strive to be the best at everything else I do. Why haven't I applied it to this thing, which is supposed to be my life? Number 5. Anti-alternative. System of a Down blend a unique mix of styles to form what is essentially their own sound. And while many might correctly assume that the band are heavily influenced by heavy metal artists, guitarist Daron Malakian explains that their influences span a variety of genres across multiple decades. I listen to a lot of shit, all the time, including a lot of 60s pop that I've been listening to in the past few years, which has been kind of bleeding through in my writing, without losing touch with a lot of the other things that make up System of a Down. You can't put your finger on the Darkthrone influence and say, there's Darkthrone, and you can't put your finger on the Kinks and say, there's the Kinks. But you can see all that kind of happening somewhere. Like, if I pointed out the chorus for Kill Rock and Roll, that melody line is very old Motown. I didn't know that when I was writing it, but after time went on, I was like, wow, that's old Motown. Because I'd been listening to the Supremes, the Marvelettes, and stuff like that.
Every time I look in your eyes, every day I'm watching you die. All the thoughts I see in you.
In addition to Motown, Daron drew significant inspiration from his discovery of some of the Beatles' lesser-known hits. I was a little heavy metal kid when I was 5 and 6. I had Van Halen, Ozzy, and Judas Priest albums. I played with toys like a normal kid, but I dragged my mom to the local record store, Warehouse Records, more often than I dragged her to the toy store. I also liked stuff like Depeche Mode, a lot of the popular music of the 80s. But once I was 12 or 13 years old, I started getting into what was then more underground metal, like Slayer. All this heavy, dark stuff. My friends used to hate the bands I liked, because they were into Youngway Malmsteen and stuff like that. Then when I was 17 or 18 years old, my life completely changed, and I attribute that to the Beatles. As a kid, the Beatles were just some band that older people listened to, and they sang stuff like Twist and Shout, which I wasn't interested in because I was into metal. But later on, I bought a Beatles greatest hits CD and heard shit like Strawberry Fields Forever, and it really changed my life. That's some of the most progressive music ever made. I became completely infatuated with it, and that's where I got more in touch with writing songs. I was always writing songs, but never realized I was doing it until the Beatles came into my life. It made me realize that I was interested in songs rather than riffs. Some guys relate to Jimmy Page or Eric Clapton. I happen to relate more to a songwriter like John Lennon.
Banana, banana, terracotta, banana, terracotta, terracotta pie. Banana, 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 terracotta, banana, terracotta, terracotta pie.
Although Daron is a lover of many genres of rock music, there is one genre that he can't stand: alternative. In fact, the guitarist claims that System of a Down initially formed as a reaction against what Daron refers to as a bland era of 90s alternative music. I remember sitting in Shavo's Honda Civic and talking about how we were frustrated with the times. That kind of pulled us together. There were some good bands to come out of that era, but I also think it was kind of a bland era. System was starting at that time, and a big part of it for me was to find a sound that wasn't that. Number 6. Old School Hollywood. Old School Hollywood is one of few System of a Down songs to utilize heavy synthesizer effects. It's also just about the only System of a Down song which talks about baseball. The song was written by guitarist Daron Malakian after taking part in an annual Hollywood Stars exhibition baseball game hosted by the Los Angeles Dodgers. I've been going to Dodgers games since I was a kid. I can't believe I'm going to take batting practice and play baseball on the field at Dodger Stadium. This really is a dream come true for me. Malakian was a lifelong Dodger fan and was initially excited about the opportunity. I mean, who wouldn't be excited to play baseball with other celebrities in a stadium where they grew up watching their favorite athletes perform? That is, unless those other celebrities ruin the moment by being egocentric jerks. As Daron explains, that was a day I spent playing baseball with Tony Danza and Frankie Avalon, who are mentioned in the song. I came home and I was so shocked by the situation I was just in. It was surreal. But it was a dream that wasn't a happy dream. It was kinda dark. I wouldn't say it was a nightmare, but it was weird. I came home, took a shower, and eventually picked up a guitar, and that song came out of me. I didn't even know what was going to come out. It's a cool track. I think it's a really different thing for System musically.
Tony Danza cuts in line. Old School Hollywood.
Number 7. Radio Video. Have you ever found yourself at a Shakey's Pizza in Southern California, crying your eyes out while celebrating a childhood birthday party with visions of hearing yourself on the radio one day?
Hey man, look at me rocking out. I'm on the radio.
Well, guitarist Daron Malakian has, minus the crying, we think, as he explains his inspiration for the lyrics of Radio Video. It's almost like someone saying, hey, I'm on the radio, but they're not happy about it. So it's another song with that party mood, but not happy to be partying. Number 8, burp. Rick Rubin's Haunted Mansion. When System of a Down went into the studio to begin working on their 4th and 5th studio albums, they went with none other than the legendary Rick Rubin to return as producer. I mean, why not? He had already produced all 3 of the band's other full-length albums. While some artists have been outspoken in their criticism for Rick Rubin's methods, System of a Down guitarist Daron Malakian has always felt that Rick utilized the right balance of hands-on versus hands-off production methods, giving the band plenty of freedom to do their own thing. When we were making the first album, I was afraid to open my mouth in the studio because it was like, wow, we got the legendary Rick Rubin. That was never Rick's trip, it was more my take. As a 23-year-old making my first album, I was very overwhelmed. But on the second record, getting to know Rick better, I felt more comfortable coming in as a producer. It's funny, when we first worked with Rick, a lot of people said, oh, he doesn't even show up. But with System, he's very hands-on, he cares. But he's also hands-off enough to let me see my vision through. I had the guitar and drum sound in my mind for this new album. I paved that direction. As usual, when a band works with Rick Rubin, they are often invited to stay in Rick Rubin's mansion during the recording process. This has led to a number of ghost stories being told by various artists who have stayed there and claim to have had supernatural encounters, including Corey Taylor of Slipknot, who claimed to see a ghost walk through his room despite no one else being there. Malakian would also notice some strange things happening. However, he was less creeped out and more intrigued by the supernatural shenanigans. Some weird stuff did happen. Every day around 5 o'clock, my amps would take a shit. Same time every day, this weird noise came out of my amp. We'd check the tubes and everything, and would all be fine. So it was a little strange there, especially when you went downstairs into the laundry room. You go down these small, winding steps, and it was kinda dark and cold down there. Creepy. But I like it creepy. I have skulls all over my house. Number 9. Daron's Saturday Night Fever. System of a Down guitarist Daron Malakian is one of the more unique guitarists in heavy metal music, growing up on a steady diet of prolific heavy metal bands and artists such as Kiss, Slayer, and Ozzy Osbourne. However, the guitarist also has an ear for music outside of the distorted solos of heavy metal. Some might even say that he has a fever.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is
a Saturday Night Fever, to be exact. As the young guitarist would borrow the soundtrack for the popular 70s film starring John Travolta, which he would consider a guilty pleasure. I remember people hating disco when I was a kid, but I just loved that album. By the time it got to me in the early 80s, when I was 5 or 6 years old, that album was already played out. I remember people laughing at me for listening to it. Some older cousins had it at their house, and I said, "Can I borrow this?" I took it and I never gave it back. It wasn't metal or anything, it was just good. I was really into the songs and into the music of the Bee Gees. Front to back, I love those songs. I've always been a huge fan of disco music through my life. We have a song called Violent Pornography in System of a Down, and the lyrics are, "It's a nonstop-disco, betcha didn't know, betcha didn't know." That line means, I love disco, betcha didn't know. That has nothing to do with the rest of the song, by the way.
Nonstop-disco, betcha didn't know. Nonstop-disco, betcha didn't know, betcha didn't know.
Number 10. Lawsuit of Chaos. Meet Casey Chaos, former singer of the bands Disorderly Conduct and Christian Death. Currently the frontman for Amen, which he has been with since the 90s. In 2002, he bumped into System of a Down guitarist Daron Malakian when both bands were performing at the Big Day Out Festival in Australia. The two would become good enough friends that in 2004, when Daron formed his own record label called Eat Your Music, he made Amen's Death Before Music the label's first release. The two would also collaborate briefly when Daron began working on his side project, Scars on Broadway. Daron and Casey both worked together on the initial writing stages for a song that would go on to be a top 40 hit, although it would not be a top 40 hit for a Scars on Broadway band featuring Casey Chaos. Instead, the song became BYOB, which is one of System of a Down's biggest hits. Malakian allegedly brought the material over to work with Serj Tankian after his relationship with Casey had cooled off a bit. Casey was understandably upset, and when Daron offered him a 2% writing credit on the song, he'd demand a higher cut. Daron withdrew his offer, and Casey would later take him to court in order to settle the issue. However, the lawsuit would not go in Casey's favor, as U.S. District Judge Robert W. Sweet would state that events surrounding the conception of the song were blurred by time and circumstances, including the use of mind-altering substances. Malakian present the most credible and consistent account of these issues. The judge would state that the only noted similarities the original recording shared with the final version of BYOB was the opening guitar riff, the bridge, and the first lines of the chorus, all of which Daron claims to have written. The judge would also describe Casey's side of the story as inconsistent and uncorroborated due to the fact that his testimony kept changing as new evidence was brought to the court's attention. Casey's case, no pun intended, would be dismissed, and the court would determine that Daron Malakian and Serj Tankian are the sole authors of the song.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the You can't handle the
If you liked that video, you should watch this one next. 10 Fun Facts About Toxicity by System of a Down.